Hello and welcome as we begin our devotion for reading through the Bible in a year in the 1 Year Bible. And this is the devotion for August 14th. And as I am live streaming, this is a bit of a thunderstorm outside, but that is good because we need the rain for sure. So here we're going to look at our epistle, our New Testament reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 1 through 18. And if you remember, we're in the middle of a discussion on meat offered to idols, and Paul here gives a defense of his apostleship. At first glance, that might seem strange, but when we get into it, you'll see that it fits the discussion perfectly. Paul begins by saying that if he is an apostle, which he is, then he is most of all an apostle to the Corinthians. That's because other people started other churches in other places, but Paul was responsible for the beginnings there and what they had become. So even if nobody else lists him as an apostle, the Corinthians ought to. They are, as Paul says, the seal of his apostleship in the Lord. He goes on then to discuss the matter of his financial support, but in a surprising way. The Corinthians should have been supporting Paul in his ministry. And in fact, this is scriptural, as Paul points out, for them to do so. He quotes Moses, who said, "You shall not muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain." And that's from Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 4. And then Paul draws the inference that also a plowman should plow in hope and the thresher thresh in hope of sharing in the crop. If Paul and Barnabas gave the Corinthians spiritual benefit, why would the Corinthians then begrudge them financial support, even though that is something far lesser than spiritual care, certainly, that they received from Paul and Barnabas? Paul wonders out loud why they don't give him the same consideration that they give to others who would readily take advantage of the Corinthians. As it is, Paul won't take advantage of them, and Paul was self-sufficient so as to not put an obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ, as he says. He gives the example of the provision made in the Torah to see to it that the priests and Levites had food, which was taken from the animals that were presented at the temple for sacrifice. He also says that those who proclaim the gospel should get their living by the gospel according to the Lord. You might remember that as Jesus sent out the disciples 2 by 2, he said to them, "Acquire no gold or silver or copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, or two tunics, or sandals, or a staff, for the laborer deserves his food." So that is the clearest reference here from the lips of Jesus. Also, there is the incident in 1 Samuel when David's soldiers didn't want to share their spoils of war with those who had guarded the baggage and not gone into battle. David replied, "Who would listen to you in this matter? For as is his share is who goes down into battle, so shall his share be who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike." Then the author of Samuel writes, "And he made it a statute and a rule for Israel from that day forward to this day." Paul, despite his right to be provided for in return for his work as an apostle, provided for himself through his work as a tent maker. He wasn't asking for money, he was defending himself, but not boasting that he preached the gospel. No, his reward is that he gave up his rights and that he preached the gospel free of charge. Here, Paul isn't just preaching either, he's practicing what he preaches. He was willing to act as a menial laborer and not a sophisticated philosopher might act. The Corinthians were used to people in privileged positions exploiting their opportunities with no consideration for others. By renouncing his privileges, on the other hand, Paul is emphasizing that salvation is a free gift of God. And this, then, is really what it boils down to, why those who think they are stronger, wiser, etc., should not just look after their own interests, but look after the interests of others, that they should bear with those who are weaker, supposedly, and act in Christian love, as we should all so do. May God be with you and bless you, and I'll look forward to